I will promise you this. I will, when it is appropriate and this investigation is complete, you will find out what happened and who was responsible. Or I will raise fresh hell. And I will chase those in the federal government who are responsible for telling us what happened, like they stole Christmas.
Like only he can, Louisiana Senator John Kennedy makes a statement about the hideous terrorist attack in New Orleans very early on January 1st of 2025. Welcome to a new episode of the Michele Tafoya podcast. Please subscribe. We don't ever want you to miss an episode. We have a really terrific guest today, but we wanted to include that sound right at the get-go because we don't want to ignore what's going on in New Orleans. Now, the Sugar Bowl is going to be played tonight. Here we are on January 2nd, and there will be major security. We also saw a Tesla explode in Las Vegas in front of Trump Hotel. So we know there's a lot of symbolism there. Were these two things connected? They're still looking at it. But there is still evil. And there are people who hate our way of life. They hate the West. And stop pretending about that anymore. And you did nothing to create their hatred. Their hatred comes from inside of them. You've done nothing to do that. This is nobody's fault. This is not America's fault. America didn't ask for this. I'm tired of hearing that. So I wanted to start with Kennedy and segue into our guest who loves America so much that he left Australia to become an American citizen. And it took him some time and it took him some money, but he did it. His name is Nick Adams. And maybe you know of him. I've seen him around. He's an author. He is a Trump surrogate, and he is an Australian-born guy who thought so highly of what he could do in America and what America stands for that he made it his mission to be here. And now that he's here, he's making the most of it. Really interesting guy. So subscribe to us, but also subscribe to him on all of his platforms. He has a new Substack out, and you can find him at nickadamsmaga.substack.com. We'll run that for you. It's in the show notes as well. Really interesting dude. So why wait? Let's talk to this man who left the beauty and what seems like the simplicity of Australia to shake things up here in America. Nick Adams is our guest. Nick Adams, welcome. I think when people hear you speak, if they don't know who you are, they're going to go, this guy is Nick Adams in USA on X. Doesn't sound like he's from the USA. When did you come here?
Michele, it's great to be with you. Look, I came to the United States for the first time in 2009. I finally got my green card in 2016, and I became a citizen in 2021. So it was a very long journey. I came to America the right way, and the right way is very expensive and it takes a long time. But if I had to do it all over again, I would. I've always loved the United States. I always believed it was the greatest country in the history of the world. I felt it was my destiny from a very young age to become an American. I like to joke that I felt like I was an American trapped inside an Australian body.
So you're a trans American.
I always loved to color outside of the lines, to be entrepreneurial, to chase things and really seek opportunity. And this is the best place for that. So I'm very grateful to be here, even though I think we're on the precipice of a new golden era, golden age for America. But even in the last 4 years, when things have been really awful, I still wake up and kiss the ground because this is still the greatest country in the world. And it's going to get even better, and we're going to really be at our full potential soon.
Nick, I covered the Olympic Games in Sydney in 2000, and I absolutely fell in love with Sydney. I didn't get to many other places in Australia, but why did you grow up thinking, and why do you still believe that America is a better place for an entrepreneurial spirit like yours?
Well, Australia is, it's possible in Australia to have a great day at the beach, but it's impossible to dream big and change the world. So if your ambitions are to simply have a great life where you're looked after, where you don't mind being surveilled and regulated and restricted, and you've got all this green and red tape around you, and if you really just prioritize other things like family and whatever else, then maybe you can certainly live a good life in Australia. But for me, who really wanted to be different, who really wanted to kind of challenge the orthodoxy, who really wanted to kind of, if I didn't like the way a table was set, Michelle, I'm the kind of person that wants to kind of flip the table over and start again. You can't really do that in other places without getting punished for it, without being persecuted for it. So for me, I wanted to come to a place where excellence was rewarded, where people liked people that were different and really pushed the boundaries of their life and success and everything else. And that's why I came here. That's what led me to be here. So I grew up in Australia, but I chose not to get old in Australia.
It's really interesting. And if people go to your page on X, which is at Nick Adams in USA, the banner says President Trump's favorite author. How did that happen?
Yes, it's a good question. It's a good question. Well, Michelle, you know, I supported President Trump from the 16th of June, 2015, the day that he came down the escalator. I didn't know President Trump. I'd never met him. I'd had no encounters with him whatsoever. However, I did know on some level at least about half a dozen of the 17 Republican candidates that were running in that primary election. Governor Perry had made me an honorary Texan. I was a regular on Governor Huckabee's radio show at the time, which was one of the big radio shows. Dr. Ben Carson had blurbed my first book. So I was good friends with Senator Ted Cruz. I knew him when he was Solicitor General, running for the Senate seat in 2012 in the primary. So I had these connections to these other candidates, and I liked all of them. But for me, I really felt that America was at a point where no political candidate, no matter how articulate, no matter how intelligent, America needed a sledgehammer. And in my view, that was President Trump. And I'd liked President Trump in 2012 even, when he kind of flirted with the idea of running. And it was actually his commentary on President Obama giving a state dinner to the Chinese at the time. I don't know if you remember this.
I do.
But he basically said that, you know, if I was president, the Chinese came, I'd take them to McDonald's. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, this is exactly the kind of leader that America needs. And then 4 years later, he announced he officially got in. I got behind him, even though, again, I didn't know him. And he's a very loyal man. He's a very grateful man. He saw me writing opinion pieces at the time. He saw me on television, and he liked what I had to say. And then, incredibly, Michelle, just 7 or 8 months after I had immigrated, I was a permanent resident. I had my green card. On the 3rd of March, 2017, barely 5 weeks into his first term, President Trump sees me on Fox and Friends early in the morning and goes on Twitter and says that Nick Adams' new book, Green Card Warrior, is a must read. And he's a great American. And that really changed my life.
I can imagine. I mean, the guy's got millions of followers.
Yes.
And, you know, any endorsement that Trump makes is one that people immediately, his fans, his supporters, just go, oh, great. What happened to your book sales after that?
Well, the book did really well, but here's the unbelievable thing. So it went on So on the 25th of August 2017, he went on and tweeted again about my previous book, Retaking America, Crushing Political Correctness. Does sound like his kind of book. And then in 2020, I published Trump and Churchill, Defenders of Western Civilization, with a foreword by Newt Gingrich. And will suffice to say the president really enjoyed that comparison, and I earned myself no less than 7 separate tweets, all of which, of course, led to the media saying, well, this guy is clearly President Trump's favorite author. He's endorsed 3 books in the 4 years that he's been president. And I was very humbled, very honored, still to this day. And I recently began a Substack, Michelle, and in the last 8 days, President Trump has posted 3 of my articles from Substack on Truth Social. So he's definitely a fan of my writing. And what a story, again, possible only in America, that this young man could come over to the United States and get the attention of the most powerful man in the world and have the most powerful man in the world become his personal publicist. I mean, it's again, it's just amazing.
Well, have you yet met him?
Oh, many times. Yes. President Trump.
Okay.
President Trump gave me a presidential appointment in 2020, and I'm sitting on the Wilson Center, which is part of the Smithsonian Center. So I've been very grateful for that. It's a 6-year appointment, so I'm actually still a presidential appointee, and I was very humbled to be able to serve in that capacity before I even became an American citizen. Such was the trust that President Trump put in me. So, yes, I've met the president many times. I was a surrogate for the 2020 campaign, a surrogate for the 2024 campaign. And in fact, President Trump even wrote the foreword to my most recent book, which came out in January of 2024, a year ago. He wrote the foreword to Alpha Kings, the roadmap for all young men to unlock their full potential.
Well, this is where it gets really interesting to me, because it seems to me that this alpha male strain, if you will, it was really a big part of Trump's campaign approach. So, as we've been discussing, in the wake of these terrorist attacks, things feel uncertain. You know, in addition to that, we've still got prices high. The markets are unpredictable. We're hearing whispers about World War III. We're 3 weeks from the inauguration. And like a lot of you, I wanted to understand how to prepare my portfolio for these turbulent times. And that led me to learn more about American independence gold, because gold and silver have historically stood the test of time through wars, through recessions and market crashes. They're not just investments. They represent stability and peace of mind for families like mine. And right now I'm holding a gold bar from American Independence Gold in my hands. It's real, it's heavy, and it could be yours when you open a gold IRA with $10,000 or more. American Independence Gold is a veteran-owned company that supports our military families and first responders. Plus, they cover custodial fees for life on qualifying accounts. Take your first step toward diversifying your portfolio today with American Independence Gold. Here's how you do it. Text the word gold to 717767 for a free investment guide. Again, gold to 717767 and discover how gold and silver could fit into your portfolio with American Independence Gold. Text gold to 717767. Do it now. Well, this is where it gets really interesting to me, because it seems to me that this alpha male strain, if you will, it was really a big part of Trump's campaign approach, you know, going on Joe Rogan, going on these various podcasts that his son Barron recommended, among others, and reaching out to young men who may feel, can we say marginalized, because so many people have told them that they are the problem. Why was that a smart approach? I mean, clearly it seemed to have worked, Nick.
It absolutely worked, and I am proud to say that I was one of the architects of that. I met with President Trump in 2023, early in February, and we sat down, and I told the president that he was obviously aware of my Twitter and all of the stuff that we're doing, and there was a big Washington Post article about me, hit piece if you like, that came out in April of 2024. But I was having tremendous success on X, galvanizing these young men, striving to build them up. And I told the president that if you go back and have a look in 2020, no matter what you think about that election, the one of the core things that was clear was that men did not turn out in the numbers that we needed them to. And
but so, before you go on, why do you think that was?
Well, I don't know, Michelle. I mean, 2020 was such a strange year.
Yeah,
I mean, it was just bizarre.
No, that's true.
It was full of abnormalities and who knows. And I personally still have questions about that election. But ultimately, I knew that young men were going to be the demographic that would get President Trump back in the White House. And he knew it as well. And we spoke about it, and I said, Mr. President, and he said, it's a good demographic for me. I said, yes, it is. I said, but let's get them to vote for you in numbers that they have never voted for you before. And ultimately, that's exactly what happened, and that's exactly what we did. And so, look, at the end of the day, Michelle, unfortunately, President Trump's not going to be in office forever. This is his final term. And if we are going to continue the hard work of making America great for future generations, we need to be honest about the methods and goals of those that want to make America weak. For well over a decade, there has been a war on young men. They have been the victims of attempts to weaken their spirit, to feminize their soul, to corrupt their thinking. And this war on young men is in fact an undeclared war on that which makes America great. And you don't need to believe me on that one. I mean, you just go and listen to the architects of plans, communists and Soviets, to demoralize our country, to really destroy and corrupt the young men of America. This is always their way of doing it. And we saw all that. When we're told that men can get pregnant and women can wave their very male organ around in a locker room, this is more than just bizarre. This is a calculated plan, a plan to weaken America by demoralizing us. And a lot of people are very kind enough to call me a hero for declaring war on radical feminism in the lead up to the 2024 election, Michelle. But truthfully, it was just a counterattack. I loved America too much to see its future be destroyed by an unholy plot to corrupt America's young men. And what I want to say is that in striving to build these young men up, I played my part in something very important, something that President Trump has mastered like no other. I tried to make America laugh again, because when we laugh at that which is objectively absurd, when we make fun of insane ideas, when we mock falsehoods, we are really healing our nation, because laughter is the best way to react to that which is untrue, unwise, and un-American. So when the stakes of our nation's future were never higher, I told young men to go out there and eat a 72-ounce tomahawk and tell vegan feminists to go and jump in the lake and get bent. When there were people that wanted our young men to forget who they are forever, I told those young men to go out and play golf, have a beer with the boys, appreciate the God-given beauty of the women that they love for who they are rather than for who they are not. That's how we fight demoralization. That's how we fight the war on men. That's how we make America great again.
It's so interesting because I can hear all the radical feminists shouting right now, "Oh, this is toxic masculinity. This is toxic masculinity." That's something that drives me a little bit crazy. I think there's toxic humanity. I think anyone's capable of being toxic. but not all men and not all masculinity is toxic. And I remember when Tim Walz was announced as Kamala's running mate, there were people who said, this is my kind of masculinity. I'm not really sure what that means. Now we're actually taking masculinity and we're carving it up into types of masculinity. I mean, to me, what you say is important, because that whole cultural Marxism, that approach is, let's demonize all these different sects and let's, slice and dice us into these little tiny groups that end up fighting against each other, or, we pit ourselves against one another as victim and as oppressor. And in this case, it's toxic masculinity versus, women of all stripes. But again, we could go off on all the hypocrisy of that, because there are certain women that these women's groups don't stand up for or don't take a stand for. It's, you knew what you were walking into, right? Because this is not an easy position to take in what has become an increasingly liberal America.
Well, that's right, Michelle. And look, sadly, over the course of the 2 or 3 years that obviously I decided to do something for young men and work with the Trump campaign and the Trump plan to target young men, there were a lot of people, even on our own side, that didn't really understand it and didn't like it, and thought that, it was kind of beneath us to behave in such a colourful way. But for me, it was really, really important to stand up for these young men, to give them confidence, not only for political reasons, Michelle, but for the country and for themselves. I mean, if you go and have a look, there are a vast number of challenges in our society that disproportionately affect young men, whether that's suicide, homelessness. There is a whole raft of them. And I wanted to be a voice for these young men. I wanted them to have their confidence back, because I don't want China to be the leader of the world. I don't want anyone else to occupy the role that America has as the world's superpower. But in order to do that, we need to be functioning on all cylinders. We can't be just going at 50%. So half of our country is doing great, but the other half not so much. There's no way that we compete with those kind of foreign adversaries if we're like that. So for me, bolstering young men, boosting them again, and having our society operate at 100% full capacity was always my goal, and I think is the only way that we can make sure that America retains its superpower role in the world.
Well, one of the things you point to, some of the issues that men have faced, and we've seen a dramatic decline in men entering the armed services, in all kinds of recruitment to the Air Force, Marines, Navy, etc., Army. And that's a national security threat. That is truly dangerous, where people say, oh, that kind of humor is dangerous. No, those are words. Now we're talking about the security of our nation, which should be any and every president's top priority. Number one, security of the nation. And it is diminished over the past 10, 12 years. How much of that do you think is about exactly what you're talking about?
I think very significantly, very substantially. This war on men has carried on to the DEI staff, and it's affected our military, and it's affected our confidence and everything else. And I'm really hoping that my good friend Pete Hegseth is somebody that is going to change all of that completely. I hope he gets confirmed. I'm confident he'll get confirmed. But that's the kind of change that we need when it comes to our military, for sure, because as you correctly point out, Michelle, that's really the whole ball game. We need to be safe. I think President Trump going back into the White House, the long overdue inauguration, it's less than 3 weeks, but it still feels like an eternity. given that
Well,
we
it
don't.
does when you see terrorist attacks in New Orleans and in Las Vegas, like we've seen in the last 2 days. I mean, that I feel like this is the timing of these things. First of all, let's talk Las Vegas really quickly. I'm sure it wasn't lost on you that this was a Tesla truck, i.e., from Elon Musk's company, in front of Trump's hotel in Vegas. That was clearly a message being sent from my point of view. What do you think?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, it was Elon Musk and Donald Trump, and they were combining the two. It was the Trump hotel and it was Elon's vehicle. But at the end of the day, I mean, this is why you can't trust the old media at all. I mean, the old media rushed to make it a big critique about Elon and the vehicle safety and everything else, when the average person like you and me, Michelle, when we saw that video, it was abundantly clear that that was a bomb. I mean, or a series of bombs, without a shadow of a doubt. And yet they tried to tell us that it wasn't. And I think they're trying to make President Trump's life as difficult as possible. It's what they did in 2017 to 2020. They're going to try it again. But this is a man that is better than ever before. He is an American icon, Michelle. He is a man like none other that I've ever met. And he has all the answers to all these people. And I just can't wait for him to get back in.
If you're like me, maybe you've had trouble sleeping. I mean, it's a major problem for people these days. And with my schedule and responsibilities, I have trouble sleeping too. At least I did, but I found something that helps me sleep better. And it's not a drug. It's not a pill. It's not a prescription. It's a cream. And I apply it at bedtime and it's simple. Look, I was skeptical about this, but I tried it and I was amazed that it really works and I sleep so much better. The company is Sleep Cream, and they use all natural CBD combined with the finest essential oils. I mean, some of it smells like rose. It's really nice. I just put it on maybe on the insides of my forearms and wrists, maybe on the bottoms of my feet. That seems to work for me. And I'm telling you, within minutes, I am relaxed and my body can do what it's supposed to do, which is sleep. Now, you can find them at sleepcream.com. Just try it for a couple nights. Find out if it works for you as well as it does for me. And if you don't experience better sleep, Sleep Cream will refund your purchase, guaranteed. You don't have to return anything. Go to sleepcream.com, and that's Sleep Cream with cream spelled C-R-E-M-E. Sleep, CREME.com. For the next few weeks, use the code GAMEDAY at checkout, and you can get free standard shipping on your first order. That's GAMEDAY, all one word, at checkout, for free standard shipping. So if you're ready, finally, for your best sleep ever, sleep, CREME.com, sleepcream.com. You know, it's crazy. I remember when he did the show, The Apprentice, and I was such a fan of that show. One of the reasons I liked it was because he would sit there and he would really listen to the feedback of all the people in the room. I don't know if you ever watched it. Were you here and saw it?
I was in Australia, but they used to play it in Australia too.
Did they? Okay.
Yes.
So
yes.
yeah, I absolutely loved that show. And then he would make these decisions, and they always seemed like the right decisions to me as a viewer. And I have a master's in business, whatever. So I have some business acumen, but it just seemed to me that he was decisive. He made the right decisions, but he also really listened. Then, Nick, he came into office, and I don't know if you remember this, but they would televise some of his cabinet meetings. They would televise some of his meetings where, if it was after a school shooting, let's listen to all these kids. What are they telling me? And I was so impressed at how he listened to people and made decisions. Now, clearly, the media twisted so many things, made up things. We know that now without a shadow of a doubt. And that the media continues to do this and thinks that we're all buying it. Why do you think they can get away with that?
Well, probably because they've gotten away with it for so long, Michelle. Look, the old media is about as corrupt as can be. and they have a narrative that they want all Americans to embrace and adopt. And they've had a lot of success with it up until now, or up until Donald Trump at least, who really kind of blew the lid on the corruption of the old media and their relationship with the swamp and everything else. So I don't think that the old media is going to change, unfortunately, but thankfully, with podcasts like Michele Tafoya's and Elon Musk taking over X, now we have other platforms, other venues, other ways of getting our message out. And so I think they're going to become increasingly irrelevant. Their power is already waning. And I suspect that after 4 years of Donald Trump, then they're going to be really hanging on for dear life. And that's the best thing that could happen for America and the American people.
How do you see this? We just alluded to Las Vegas and New Orleans, and you've mentioned a couple times we've got a few weeks here before the inauguration. How do you see these next few weeks? How in peril is this country before Trump steps into office?
It's very frightening. It's very scary. I really,
and I'm not trying to be over the top about this, Nick. I'm trying to be realistic, and because I wouldn't have thought this way until these last two events, these terrorist attacks. That a guy flying with an ISIS flag barrels down Bourbon Street in New Orleans on New Year's Day at 3:15 in the morning, killing at least 15. It seems to me to be, whatever his motivation was, ISIS inspired, and as you said, just in time so that Trump can come back in office and get rid of them again.
Yeah, so Michelle, look, I'm really in two kind of minds with this. Look, I was at the inauguration in January 2017, and there were so many protesters. There was a lot of violence. There were shops that were firebombed. It was not a pleasant environment. And while a lot of the TDS, the Trump derangement syndrome, seems to have abated because of the popular vote, because of, well, there's a whole variety of reasons. I know that the instinct is to think that this inauguration is not going to be as contentious, or that there are not going to be as many protesters. I don't know if that's the case. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it is, but I also wouldn't be surprised if it's just as bad, if not worse. Now, I know that it's not in President Trump's. I know him well enough to know that it is not in his DNA to minimize anything or do anything like that. And he certainly has earned the right to have the biggest and best inauguration that he wants. But, I really want him to be safe, and I really want him to be in the White House. And I know that in 1984, for example, President Reagan, due to inclement weather, held a private inauguration ceremony. I would be, I know President Trump's probably not open to that, but I certainly would be open to that, just for his own protection.
Yeah, I can't see him doing it. I can't. He is, this is a guy that went back to Butler. So it's sort of like, that's just not his style. I want to listen, Nick, I want to shift gears for a second and read one of your posts on X. It's really, to me, depicts what you're talking about in terms of sort of empowering young men again. And at the same time, I could see, and as you've explained, people going, come on, man, that's a little too much. You write, Alexander the Great did not conquer the world by drinking soy milk. Genghis Khan did not build an empire by playing Fortnite. Benjamin Franklin did not invent electricity by eating boneless wings. Tim Tebow did not win the Heisman by snacking on rice cakes. Moses didn't lead the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt by questioning God's will. Donald Trump did not become one of the wealthiest men in history by apologizing. Dwight Eisenhower did not defeat the Nazis with gender pronouns. Read your Bible, eat meat, lift heavy, be great. I could see some people reading that and going, okay, that's come on now. You're telling me I've got to read the Bible, I've got to eat meat, I've got to lift heavy. So when you post something like that, this is directed at those young men, yes? And what is it that how do you think it works in their mind as they read it?
Well, first of all, we need to understand, Michelle, and a lot of people don't, that this particular generation of young men, these Gen Xers, they are totally different in the way that they consume information and receive information. So someone, for example, like Dr. Jordan Peterson, who for me is someone whose books I've read, who I enjoy watching videos of, whose content I engage with. Gen
He's
X,
bold. He is
yeah,
bold.
yeah, but these young guys who are 16, 18, 21, 25, I just turned 40 years old. And these guys are very different to my generation, to millennials. They don't like the serious. They don't like being told what they should do. The way that you reach Gen Xers, the way that you reach this current crop of young people is by entertaining them, is by making them laugh. That's how you educate them as well. So it's a very, very different approach. And of course, a lot of older people don't really recognize that, because even someone like me who's still young is also different to that. But these are kids that are born with an iPad practically in their
Yeah.
hand.
Yeah.
And so the way to get them attached to you is by making them laugh, because they're immediately sharing, watching. I mean, I've become one of the biggest, most sought after talents on Cameo, for example. And it's all these young guys who want to get a video of me saying something funny about their friends so they can put it in the group chat and then all the boys can laugh. And that's kind of how it works. And so, look, I mean, I have a lot of fun with it. I mean, I'm a full milk guy myself,
No, you're no soy boy, I'm guessing.
There's no oat milk, almond milk, cashew milk, God knows what other milk. If it doesn't have a breast, then I don't quite know how to get milk out of it. So
Oh,
these guys love it. And again, because their whole generation has been raised so politically correct in such a woke way that even colorful, flamboyant language is did that person just say that?
yeah, yes.
So
It's
you
like
can,
we've diluted everything. And, Dave Chappelle continues to get attacked for his humor. Comedy is free speech.
it is.
Comedy is free speech. And anyone who calls it quote unquote dangerous, that's a word that is being thrown around a lot these days when it comes to things that people say. That's dangerous. And I'm not sure how we get there. I mean, it's dangerous if you raise a society of people who can't make their own decisions, who don't have agency, who don't know better how to make decisions for themselves. But this word dangerous, it seems to me, is being misused. What's dangerous to me is people coming across our border who are unvetted, is mentally deranged people pushing people in front of subway cars. It's people deciding to carry out terror attacks because they're so despondent, or whatever the case may be. That to me is dangerous.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say to you, Michelle. I mean, the people that call me or any other kind of humorist dangerous, they're usually the dangerous ones. They've got the dangerous agenda. It's dangerous to shut down free speech. It's un-American to shut down free speech. And you're right, there are all these other perils that they are a part of and are actively giving agency to. And yet they never talk about the dangers at the border. They never talk about the dangers of there being a man in a woman's locker room or a man in female sports. So it's a very strange time that we live in.
Yes. Okay, I want you to get a pencil or pen ready, or your phone, or whatever you type into these days, because I'm going to give you a number that you can text at the end of this spot so that you can find out more about something I think is really important. With all the uncertainty in the world, with the markets being as unpredictable as they are, with, terrorism and just global violence, I wanted to understand how to get my portfolio in shape for these turbulent times. And that led me want to learn more about American independence gold. Now, gold and silver, historically, they've stood the test of time through things like we're enduring right now: wars, recessions, inflation, and market crashes. They're not just investments. They represent a sort of stability and peace of mind for families like yours and like mine. And right now, I'm holding a gold bar from American Independence Gold in my hands. It's real, it's heavy, and it could be yours when you open a gold IRA with $10,000 or more. American Independence Gold, one of the reasons I love them, it's a veteran-owned company. It supports our military families and our first responders. Plus, they cover custodial fees for life on qualifying accounts. You want to find out about this. So take your first step. Here's how I asked you to grab a pencil or pen toward diversifying your portfolio today. American Independence Gold. Here's how you do it. Text the word gold to 717767 for a free investment guide. That's gold to 717767. Discover how gold and silver could fit into your portfolio with American Independence Gold. Text that word gold to 717767. Do it now.
It's the inverted.
It fascinates me in a way, Nick, because it is a strange time. I feel like I'm living through an important time in world history, in American history. I feel like we're seeing stuff that hasn't been seen in a long, long time. Like, this is not a normal little era we're in. It's strange. It's a little upside down. Do you feel, as I know, I have a lot of friends who feel like the pendulum is starting to swing back? No time to maybe, take the foot off the accelerator, but that the pendulum is starting to swing back.
Well, no question. What happened in November of last year, I mean, it was a landslide. And there is no question that, to me, that signals there is a change. People have become sick of the woke stuff being taught in schools and being shoved down our throats in every aspect of our life. But the important thing to remember, Michelle, is that the left is not going to go away. They didn't go away under Reagan, and they're not going to go away now under Trump. And they're going to continue to fight. And if you think about it, I mean, I remember watching Obama speak about this, how absolutely shattered he was after Reagan won in 1984, and he realized that they had no chance to kind of have their victories in the electoral space. So that's when they decided to go after the cultural institutions, entertainment, media, education, both secondary and tertiary. And they did. And they took all of those over. And for a long time, we were and they still really have a very strong footprint in those places. So they're going to find ways that may not be, if Donald Trump has an amazing 4 years and then JD Vance or somebody else, the same as Donald Trump, gets another 8 years, these guys are not going to go away. They're going to recognize that their time is not in winning elections. Their time is to focus on something else that will make it harder for Republicans in the future to win elections again.
Well, here's something interesting you said. You said they've taken over these things, and I agree with you. But when things get taken over, someone's allowed them to get taken over. So people caved. People in media caved. People in entertainment caved. People in classical education caved to these people. And I think we need to be really mindful of straightening our spines and not letting that happen in all of these areas that are so influential in society. I mean, how do you respond to that idea of, yes, things get taken over, but they get taken over because someone allows it to happen?
That is a big problem. We need to have a spine. We need to have what I like to call testicular fortitude. And unfortunately, there's a lot of
If there's testicular fortitude, like I feel like I'm a really strong person, but I don't have testicles. What would you call my fortitude?
Well, Michele Tafoya,
like mammary fortitude,
MTF. Look, so look. I mean, there is one thing that, in terms of courage, conservatives need to be more courageous and more fearless than they've ever been before.
Absolutely.
But Michele, a lot of the takeovers are done through infiltration. So, in addition to being courageous, we need to be aware, and we need to kind of be onto things and onto people, because usually these guys that are trying the subversion don't announce themselves, and they catch us sleeping or napping. So we need to be courageous. We need to be street smart. We need to be intelligent, and we need to be fearless. We need to remember that, when these people tell us to sit down and shut up, we need to remind them that our Second Amendment means that we never have to sit down, and our First Amendment means that we never have to shut up.
Yeah. Well said. Final question for you. No, I have two more. First of all, quickly, how much of a sort of alarm clock, wake up call, whatever you want to characterize it as, do you think this New Orleans situation and this Vegas situation have provided the American people in terms of, we're still not, there is evil in the world.
Oh, there certainly is. And there always will be. And that's why we need good people that are fearless, standing up to evil. And that's why, as a whole nation, we should be breathing a sigh of relief that in 2.5 weeks, Donald Trump will be back in the Oval Office. Look, he destroyed ISIS very quietly. You didn't hear much about it. It was done very quickly, and we didn't hear about them for 7 years. So he's going to do the same again. I have no doubt in my mind. And the reason that these guys have been allowed to get back in is that we didn't have that strong presence of goodness fighting back. We have a president that hardly has a functioning brain right now in Joe Biden, and that doesn't help these situations in New Orleans, in Las Vegas. We also have DEI, and we kind of saw that with this Ann Kirkpatrick lady there, who was the police chief, who used to be the police chief in California. And so we need to make sure that we get good people standing up to evil that have the capacity to defeat evil. And that's why I think all of us owe President Trump a collective debt of gratitude.
And I have a feeling you've just also kind of answered my last question. I like to ask people what makes them hopeful. Because right now, as you say, you and I have discussed how crazy this world is, how much is going on that makes us feel nervous, uncertain, anxious, afraid. So besides Donald Trump coming back into the White House, what else is giving you hope right now?
America, the American people, the American culture. Michele, it was Alexis de Tocqueville who observed in his sociological masterpiece, Democracy in America, that the true genius of Americans lay in their ability to repair their faults. He noted the uncanny propensity of these people to recorrect a cultural trajectory. And when you go back and have a look, and then Winston Churchill said that America always does the right thing after exhausting every other option. And when you go back and you look throughout history, from the early defeats by Britain in the War of Independence, to the loss of the Philippines, to Pearl Harbor, to the days following September 11, every single time America has been at its lowest ebb, every single time America and freedom have been attacked, America has always emerged bigger and stronger and better than ever before. And that's what gives me hope. It's the self-corrective nature of the American culture and the American people. When we needed to shift our education system to favor mathematics and science so that we could achieve our goals in space, we did it. We are a very flexible, high-moving, fast-learning society and group of people. And that's what gives me hope, because I think we're going to adjust and adapt and adopt what we have to make sure that America's best years are still ahead. And I'm really proud that I'm here and a part of that. I wasn't born in America, Michelle, but I did come as quickly as I could.
Well, I am making a note to myself to not move to Sydney, as I once had thought about doing, because America's
Let's
clearly
the holiday.
A good place to It was phenomenal. Nick, it's been so wonderful talking to you. It's really, I've seen you. I didn't know what to expect, but this has been a joy. I hope we can do it again.
I look forward to it, Michelle.
You guys, you saw where you can follow him. It's also in the show notes. And like Nick, I would encourage you to be brave, do good, and we will see you next time.